Hello, my name is Sylvain Rochon. I am the Paradise Engineer, and this is another installment of a video, an opinion video. And this time I'm going to talk actually again about the economy. But I guess this one was a little bit motivated by some interactions that maybe made me a little pissed. So if you read the article, there's a little bit more emotion into it, but I'll remain calm during the video for sure. I just wanted I guess I was complaining about how we tend to approach, or at least the experts that are out there and the politicians tend to approach solutions that are essentially 100 years ago, like 1919 instead of 2019, trying to take ideologies that are way past. We've learned since then, looking backwards for solutions or adaptations of these solutions that are still 100 years ago, is not going to bring us forward. It's not going to solve modern solutions. So I decided to write an article on that topic, basically. And as a header, I've put in Einstein's famous quote that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, as the definition of Einstein's definition of insanity. And therefore, a lot of our leaders are insane, and even some of the experts. And part of it, I understand, is fear of change or backlash from the population, especially if you're talking about politics. Most people don't have the knowledge or expertise or information about past experiences. I mean, people are just living the daily lives. So whatever may sound familiar, tweaked, kind of makes sense because it's something that they know and understand. So, but in the fourth industrial revolution, where we are in now, things are changing way faster, and we are going towards breaking points that we've never seen before. We've never experienced where we are going in a multitude of ways. So I guess where I become a bit peeved at this whole topic is that this either indecision or in us trying to grapple with the future using past ideas, people are losing their lives, literally. People are on the streets, die every winter. People get depressed because they lose their jobs and they can't really sustain themselves. Some accidents, healthcare is too expensive, like all sorts of things that are very common to our lives. Get people killed. Now, this is kind of normal. We're used to it because this is normal statistics, if you will. But the point is, we have the knowledge from the past and the technology of today and soon the near future that can resolve all the major issues that we have so that people don't have to die. But in this case, it's a bit difficult because it implies literally changing how we view our economy. And I've written about this before. I've done a video about this before, but I want to take it from a different direction. We have, like if you look at our past, I'm just going to trace a bit of a history here, like economic theory, right? So we've had, Adam Smith a while ago. I don't know the exact years, but that was one of the fathers of modern economics. He was a great believer of the self-adjusting effect of the free trade system, like very capitalistic. I mean, he was, colonial American. And that was his idea, like the foundation of what the U.S. is today, basically capitalism, the free trade market. But that was his brilliant idea, and it was awesome. It was a first idea, a first test. It kind of worked great, and his opponent, I guess, ideological opponent, who just as smart, was Karl Marx in the East, and he read the theories from Adam Smith, and he said, well, Well, that sounds like a great system, but if you leave it running, like I think that eventually you have like a wealth economy gap that will occur because the people that people will some people will tend to accumulate more, become owners, and then others are workers, and there's a multi-class system, like a wealth economy, a wealth inequality that will get created. So we need to. He figured out something a bit different, which was the foundation of what eventually became communism, which is like, well, let's avoid the free market system because that's going to become something terrible. And let's create something where the state basically controls everything, so everything's equal everywhere. So we don't go into that wealth inequality. And it was represented to an extreme by certain countries in communism and so on and so forth. Um, and we know that didn't work so well for the people, and there was still a wealth inequality that emerged from it, from the proletariat, for example, and so on. And in the States, what was the total free market was going towards where Karl Marx was expecting it to go. There was a gap in different inequalities, but before it went too far, another economist called what's his name, Keynes, John Keynes, yeah, um, he acquiesced Karl Marx remarks like, okay, well, I think some government regulations is needed so that we don't have that happening. Keep the free market, that works great, innovation, people are happy, they're creating businesses, opportunities, and so on. Let's keep the good parts of it, and but let's make sure government has a say, so that you don't have that big gap kind of happening and widening. And that went well, actually, for quite a while, until I believe the 70s and the 80s, where it was Milton Friedman, another economist that came in, that became more prominent at the time. And he said, no, that we have to reduce the role of government. Definitely, it's going to be better, so that there is more capital that remains like in the free market. And basically, since the 70s, what happened is that, well, the wealth gap went crazy till what we have today, where like 1% of, I don't know the stats offhand, but the 1% of the American population, or North American population, owns like 60% of or more of the whole economy and all the resources. And that became exponential real quick when there was a retraction of this government influence on how the economy was run under the Keynesian kind of methodology. And that's just a history of things. And so we learn lessons through that process. We know, and I wrote an article about this, and it's linked in my article. Like, we know that it's best to have a certain amount of government involvement in the economy while maintaining the free market. I call it the sandbox governing principle, where the government essentially creates the sandbox and the rules, and then let the companies play in the sand, like let them completely free to play. But the government has to set a certain amount of rules, and each nation has to decide what those rules are. And from experience, we can figure out what's best, what's less. There's a lot of countries with lots of models. There's lots of examples, lots of experience. We can figure that out. So that's kind of neat. It's great. It's all that experience. Now we're at a point where, again, I go back to these politicians and experts. They say, well, okay, we learn all this, so now there's automation in play and AI. Well, we have to keep people working at jobs somehow. We have to keep government fed for all this regulation, and we have to maintain these systems that we've learned worked. Well, it's a good idea, but we have to learn also from what's going on and kind of project into the future as well. We can't just kind of adjust what we already learned without considering projection and forecasting, strategic forecasting of the impact of AI, artificial intelligence. AI is artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, 3D printing, these fundamental disruptive technologies. That's why we call this period we're in, that we started recently, the fourth industrial revolution. It changes things. It changes the economy and how we operate within the economy. And in this case, what is happening is that not only do we have tools that are making us more productive, which is the old paradigm of productivity enhancement. You know, an economy is production, management, and consumption of resources. That's what the economy is. What we want to do is consume. That's why we produce and manage the resources in the first place, is to consume them. We don't want to do all that work. We want it. We want the consumption. We want the resources and the consumption, the goods to consume, with minimal cost. Well, general cost like environmental, energy, and so on. It's good for the planet if it's minimized. It's good for us because it's less resources and effort involved. And we've used all sorts of mechanical tools, electrical tools, computers, information, and now it's converted into something a little bit different, which is artificial intelligence, fundamentally the major disruptor that is transforming the whole into the fourth, our society into the fourth industrial revolution period. With AI is that you're actually replacing human involvement at a basic level. Basically, it's thinking for us. You know, we're no longer manipulating the tools to increase our productivity. We are turning the switch on, and the tool learns on its own and improves and is better than us at figuring out the problem. Right now, the McKinsey Global Institute has, that's a report from 2017, but I think it still holds. They didn't do an update yet. So, so it's over 50% of all paid tasks today, which today was 2017, can be done with current technology using automation. Now, 2 years ago, 2017, just to give you an idea how this number is fundamentally outdated. That 2 years ago, Google and Amazon started selling the first smart speakers with AI. That was only 2 years ago. Now AI is everywhere. Next year, we have self-driving cars. I mean, that percentage is, you know, McKinsey did some projections for the last few years, and it was supposed to be somewhere near 60% by now, but I don't have the new revised number. So this is AI encroaching onto our territory, doing the production and the management part of the economy, because we still want to consume, because that's our whole purpose of doing all this activity. That was our purpose of working. It wasn't really to have a meaning to our life, where some people rationalized. No, that's just a rationalization to give meaning to that 40 to 60 hours a week we used to work, and now it's still 40 hours a week for most people, and sometimes more. No, we want to consume. We want to be able to live, to survive. We want food. We want a shelter, just the basic stuff, and some luxury once in a while, and entertainment. That's us consuming. So when AI is doing all this disruption and basically replacing the worker for the large part, in the next few years, probably next 10 years will be transformational in this sense. Well, where's this theory from Keynes or Friedman, like the wealth inequality? Well, how does that work if very few people are actually working and participating in the production itself? It really doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. So we have to think about the economy and how we want to participate in the consumption only. That's our goal. We have to stop thinking about how we can remap the economy, still have AI, and still have every adult working X number of hours a week, so that we can trade and see who gets to eat, right? And who gets a shelter and who lives on the streets. No, that's just crazy thinking. And that's 1919 type of thinking, like a scarcity thinking. The resources are abundant. Right now, we're using solar for energy a lot more. I mean, it takes a while to change infrastructure, but solar energy, even though in some countries it's only 20 to 30%, most advanced countries that are using solar, as an example, they're only using it for like 20 to 30% of their energy production. And yet, solar energy is cheaper than coal energy, coal power. It's cheaper. So imagine when solar becomes a bigger player, like 50, 60% of our energy production. And we have alternatives that are really good, like nuclear. I know what you're thinking. Nuclear is kind of scary. It's very, very stable, but in particular, very stable if instead of uranium, we use thorium, which doesn't cause the same problems as the uranium. There's no radioactive waste in the same way as a traditional nuclear plant. It's much safer, much more reliable, and so on. Well, that's a great alternative as well, not only solar. So we have abundance of energy. The sun's always going to be there. And if we look for how much, especially thorium, that we have on the planet, to do fission, we got loads and loads and loads of time to figure out the new thing. I mean, we got plenty of energy, and we know enough about the planet and the environment and how it works and all the chemistry, and we have advanced techniques to convert matter to energy, energy to matter, matter to matter. We can manage the planet's limited resources, because even though it's big, it's limited. It's only this one blue ball of material we have access to. It's not easy to access asteroids and stuff. But we can manage that so that we reconvert different things into what we need and back into the environment and so on. And we can use the environment like a chemical plant. Make sure we nourish it. Make sure we have a lot of smart systems so that we have better produce closer to home, more efficiency, better yields, and so on and so on. And I can talk about this. I mean, there's exciting technologies in all these spaces where we can essentially have all our meat, all our vegetables grown and produced within the city borders without increasing the size of the cities, and leaving nature regrow its forests and become the lungs of the earth and the haven for all the animals, the wild animals, because we won't, after a certain number of years, we won't need all the domesticated animals that cause a whole bunch of problems in the environment and a very inefficient way to produce our food, and so on and so on. I could go on again. That's not the purpose of this article, but we can do a whole lot better. That's the point. We can make sure we have robotics, AI, automated systems, and what we understand to make things abundant for everybody. We stand on the shoulders of generations of people who have suffered through inefficient technologies, figuring stuff out, making mistakes, people dying along the way because we couldn't help it. We couldn't help them in some cases we could but didn't. That's the history of humanity and mistakes we make. But now we have much better understanding, and we can do a lot better. We can make sure that everybody on the planet eats well, has shelter, without worrying about the environment completely. And like I mentioned, we could rejuvenate, like right now, about 23% of the planet is considered still wild. Only 23%. Well, we can probably make it, bring it back to 50% or maybe more. And that would be great for us, because all these biospheres and these biosystems are part of the chemistry of the planet, of how it rejuvenates and brings stuff back so that we can keep consuming and using and living. So one of the these are a little bit, I mean, okay, let's talk about these, because every time I think about these ideas that come out of these experts' mouth, I laugh, because it's as if they're not thinking at all. Uh, there's the robot tax idea to go through a transition towards what I'm talking about. Uh, that's just trying to keep things the way they are. It's a dumb idea. And I can think of 3 reasons why it's dumb. One, it doesn't solve the job issue. Like people have the issue like, what am I working or not? And okay, so you're automating and now you're taxing the robot. So the company gets taxed essentially, that who owns the robot. The person still doesn't have a job or a way to sustain itself. The robot gets taxed. It's just money that goes back to the government. And no more than the taxes that the employee would have paid probably. So it really doesn't solve a whole lot. Second, what's a robot exactly for taxation purposes? Is my smartphone a robot? Is it the robot in the line? Like, is it the AI that's kind of working the software on the cloud in the background? Like, how do you actually define what's being taxed or not? That's a super challenging question. Because I mean, we can see a robot being like a physical mechanical thing, but most work especially in high-tech companies or even like large corporations, a lot of AI that's destroying a whole bunch of white-collar jobs. It's software. It's nebulous. It's like, how do you define? I mean, how do you tax these things? How do you calculate it? How do you file your IRS or your CRA or whatever, to whatever taxation agency? I mean, a huge issue. How do you figure that out? Even though it's possible, I mean, it's weird. It's crazy. And third, this is an idea of trying to stay in the last century instead of moving forward. It's about trying to keep things as they are. And fundamentally, I mean, that we all should be against about regressing or staying put. Now, the second idea that is, I think is also crazy is the job guarantee idea. I mean, it's better than a robot tax. At least there's an effort fundamentally to make sure people have food on the table. You got your job, you lost your job, the federal government gives you another job. You still get a pay and you still get to work and do things. I mean, it's trying to stay behind in the way we used to work, but at least there's food on the table for a lot of people, or for most people, if it works reasonably well. Now, the major problem with this is that we're trying to deal with the automation here by creating jobs that are not needed. So you're diluting the productivity. You're decreasing the average productivity by having human beings that are less efficient, more problematic, more costly, do some of the work that AI could do better. It's kind of having a kid do busy work while mom does real work, like in the office when you bring your kid at work. It's like, like what the kid does is useful, but I mean, it's a real staff, or you could do it much better, or the computer you use could do better, but you're keeping them busy. And you give them an allowance for that. Great. We're not kids. We don't need an allowance. And we all know also that, because this has been done many times in a lot of countries where government just creates jobs because they need jobs created, doesn't work. A few years later, usually all the jobs that need to be cut because there's a huge impact on the economy and a whole bunch of other sectors. And people are complaining that they are at work and they know that they're useless at their job. And then there's all this money being spent illogically in jobs that we know could be assigned to people, or in this case, AI and automation that could do much better in productivity. So that's a bad idea. It would be at best a little band-aid to keep us afloat while we figure the next stuff out. That would be much better. So what we need to do, we need to create a new way of dealing with the economy with automation. And right now, the issue is that we're in the transition. We can't just fully convert all our supply chains into automated systems. There's a lot of players. We're still figuring some stuff out. And there's a lot of jobs that we just can't create a narrow AI and robotics for just yet that would be more efficient than a person. And what we want is increase the efficiency of the production so we can consume at a lower rate with less economic impact and environmental impact. So we still kind of need to kind of have a hybrid system while we figure a way where we can completely automate the production and the management of resources, and we can focus exclusively on what we really want, which is the consumption part again. And there's a lot of ideas out there. I've spoken and I wrote many times about a transitional idea, which is proposed by candidate Andrew Yang and in the US. It's a lot of political parties in Canada where I am, except for the Conservatives, I believe one of the major parties, they're all proposing some form of basic income for the future and budgeting on how to do it across the country. A lot of nations are figuring that out because that's a smart way to go about it. I mean, it doesn't fit the past models, the Keynes and the Miltons, completely, but it's about that system has learned, we have learned from those systems, and that's actually good solution to transition towards a full automated system. Because, and I didn't write about this in the article, I'm just adding you some bonus here. If automation takes, we want to encourage automation to actually do this, we still need to eat. And we're still in a trade system, and we still have a free market. All the good stuff, we can retain the good stuff. We can fix the regulatory and the government participation to reduce wealth inequality. And basic income is one way to actually do that, where depending on how it's structured, you can tax the rich a lot more, so that a lot more that don't have, the have-nots, that aren't owners, have more of this basic money, essentially, or dividends from standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and building all this society and this technology over generations, right? And everybody gets to participate in the economy by buying what they need, because they have now money to buy. And it's easier than ever to participate in the gig economy and have some kind of job, at least a part-time job. But if you have your bases covered, you can find good employment. And we know that increases innovation as well. So we can figure things out for ourselves as individuals on how we're going to spend our time to increase that income from basic, that is guaranteed, to higher levels, so we can get more luxuries or more entertainment, better cars and whatever you want. The rich are fine. They're fine because they own everything. They have money. They're good. Even if we're taxing them more, they're still fine. They may say it's unfair. Well, back in, I think it was, in the 40s and 50s, I believe in the States, the marginal tax rate went up to approximately, I think, 94% over the 90s in the US. That passed. Like half of the sector, in the last 100 years, 50 of them, the marginal tax rate in the States was higher than 70%, or at least 70%. Those were the best years where it was most fair between classes of people, between rich and the middle class and so on. No problem. You got money? Great, share a bit of it. You still live like a king. The rest of us, we can trampoline ourselves into innovation and do some good things, and we can live the Canadian and or American dream, whatever you want to call it, and let calmly, taking a breath, automation, AI, which is part of the innovation into increasing our productivity and removing a lot of the jobs we don't want to do that we prefer not doing. And then that allows us, with tweaks of that particular system, once that's set up, to go towards a system where we don't need that basic income anymore at all. That's going to take about 20 years. It won't take that long. It's exponential development and exponential deployment of these technologies. And AI in about 20 years will be just as smart as we are, able to tackle just about any job that comes out of the woodwork that needs to get done better than us. And in 20 years, we probably will have fairly good robotics to really quickly adapt to and plug in the AI that would do a job. Right this year, I saw one of the first robots that is designed to be given a task, and it builds another robot that is specialized to do that task on its own. A deep learning AI system, of course. That's in 2019. In 10 years from now, these robots will be commonplace, and they'll just build new robots. AI will be programmed, because that's already been done 2 years ago as a prototype by Google. An AI that can write new deep learning AI, been done. We're just improving on the model right now, just don't hear about it. So this is the world we live in. This is what we need to do. So let's stop thinking about the old days and trying to get concepts back. Let's think about the future. And we'll save millions of lives every month by doing this thought process transition and working towards a better system. That's it, that's all. So what are we waiting for, huh? That's it for now.